All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Today, I have the wonderful opportunity to talk to Morgan. I'm so excited to dig into his past, his career, what he's been doing. But for the topic of today, we're actually going to be talking about moonlighting, why it's important, whether you have that entrepreneurship itch, whether you're looking to expand your skill set, or you're really looking for a sandbox to play around and grow your skill set that you might not be able to do in your 9 to 5. This is the guy you need to be talking to. We're going to be going over different things from how to get going, what are financial tips and tricks, why you should look at it, and really how to structure that opportunity for yourself. But before I keep going, I want to introduce our wonderful guest, Morgan. Morgan, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, I appreciate the invite. I'm excited to be here. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I think has served me well over the course of my career. And so I'm excited to share that. A big passion that I have is helping founders bring their ideas to life. And day to day, that's actually what I do is I get embedded with teams. It's a very connected process where we're working through all the early stages of a business. And in order to do that over the course of my career, I've found the need to, within my own self and my own profession and craft, to keep experimenting, to try things, to dabble. And that's a way to stay relevant. It's also a way to stay inspired. And as I work with software engineers, designers, copywriters, video editors, are kind of across the creative spectrum, I've noticed that those that are really good and also go the distance in terms of staying with that craft over the course of their career have a really healthy dose of side projects and stuff that they do to keep them sharp and stay on the edge. And so I've really tried to balance both of have a great day job that I love and also do side projects, which I refer to as moonlighting, to have a nice, healthy balance of both and be able to walk that well to keep the day job and also keep doing side projects to stay learning and stay fresh.
Oh, I love that. Morgan, and you wrote a blog. I'm going to bring this up. You wrote something that I thought was so unique and a great way to think about this. You said, I have never found a single job or style of work that fulfills all my curiosities, all my interests, all my needs. You said, instead of tirelessly searching for that feeling of a single choice, I embrace a different approach. And that hit home, right? I think so many people are looking for their job to be the end all be all, where everything I do in there is perfect, when I might think about it a little bit differently, very similar to you, where if I'm a carpenter, I'm going to work my butt off at my 9 to 5, building awesome stuff, but I might even make some end tables for my friends or have the coolest kitchen table at my house. So tell me, when did you initially get started? What kind of caused the itch? And before we even go into that, what is kind of the key difference in your mind between like a moonlighting versus a freelancing or a side hustle?
Yeah, one of the things that you just touched on that I think is super important in every area of life is how do I get my needs met? And when I look across people who are successful and people who fail or people who just like really struggle, one thing that I noticed is when we expect one place to meet all of our needs, we tend to have a lot of friction. I think one is because expectations are hard to manage. They also change over time. But whether we're looking at dating relationships, being married, having kids, or, we dive into our professional lives in all areas, when we look for one place to have our needs met, it creates a lot of friction and we're putting a lot of eggs in one basket. And usually that basket is another human who has their own expectations and their own needs. And years ago, I began asking myself, well, what if rather than just repeating the same behavior myself, I look toward, might there be a way of meeting my needs, but cobbling together the things that I think could meet those needs best? That actually decreases the expectation I bring into relationships of any kind, and puts more responsibility on me to understand myself and my needs, and then research opportunities to really refine that. And so when I think about my career, and in the early days, I was just getting started. I don't like, well, I love the feeling of being new at something, or that like fresh, oh my gosh, there's so much to learn, let's get curious. I don't like not being good. And so those two things war with each other anytime I start something new, which is there's a lot to learn and I'm not good at it. And so when I first started dabbling on side projects and things like that, it was really an attempt to get better at the thing I was doing during the day. Early in my career, I'd actually left college to work with an early stage coffee company. I was designing coffee labels pretty soon. I was doing website stuff and inventory management and a lot of different things. And I used early mornings and late nights to get ahead, to figure out, okay, well, this week I've got to get this done, and how the heck do I do that? And so it was very learning oriented. And then over the years, it's transitioned to where today I feel very confident as I'm stepping into certain things within my sweet spot. And so now I can use that free time to continue to experiment, learn new things, but also apply what I can do very well and do it to make extra income, or really just keep refining the craft so that every day I'm showing up with the best that I have to offer, and, to continue raising the bar.
Ooh, I love that. And I think even hearing your timeline of it, where initially, because again, I do the same thing. I Moonlight, I have consulting side, I even have an e-commerce business on top of the punch list side. But I think the first step was I need to learn at a unique rate where I might have a very structured learning in my 9 to 5, but let's say you're doing your examples of coffee. In your 9 to 5, every day you're creating coffee labels, but you might know long term, I want to be able to design emails. That side or moonlighting side of things can kind of be that avenue to say, I want to test new things. And it really is unique to kind of watch it go from, hey, this is an opportunity to learn. Oh, wow. Next thing you know, someone's paying you to do it. It's the biggest freak out moment, whether it's the Shopify cha-ching or your first invoice goes out and someone pays you. You're like, I have made it. And I think now in a time where financial stability is hard, things are expensive, people are looking for personal growth, this is such a great opportunity to do that. You said something earlier I really appreciated. The ownership's on you, right? You can't go into a job with the expectation to say, I need you to fulfill all of my needs here. That's just, you're not going to be happy. Whatever, if you have expectations set like that, you're never going to be happy. So I do think this is a very healthy way to approach this. It becomes somewhat addicting. Speaking of the structure, and I think this is really important, you did an awesome article. You call it the donut method. I thought this was such a unique way to think about this. Can you kind of give us a very high level of how you thought of this, and then what does that mean to you and how you explain it to other people?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm always looking for analogies to help people understand. I think one of the big mistakes that we can make as service professionals in any discipline is this curse of knowledge, where we know so much about our area of focus that we actually lose the ability to relate with people who don't know that stuff. And so analogies are a great way of bridging that gap. And I think really good craftspeople who care about whether it's the next generation or connecting with people who don't know their thing is to look for ways to relate to them and to tell them and help teach and guide and direct. And so analogies are really important for me because they're a tool that help me take what I know and distill it down for people who don't have the same experience and expertise. And so as I was trying to reconcile these things, okay, I think I've found something that works as it relates to staying inspired, growing as a professional, but kind of in the beauty of making it work is this dance of they need to be integrated, because obviously I am a single person, and so it needs to be integrated in that sense, but they need to be different. And as I was thinking, okay, what are things in my life that are both together but clearly separate? And the first thing that came to mind to me was a donut, because I have a love-hate relationship with donuts. I think they're delicious. And also you eat too many of them over too short of a period, and now all of a sudden they start to impact other life goals and health metrics. And so years ago, when I moved into Atlanta, I actually noticed there's a couple of really good high-end gourmet donut shops. And after trying them, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I have some opinions about what makes a good donut. And it isn't like you just put it in your mouth and your brain lights up, because pretty much any donut will do that with enough sugar. But it's really a couple of key components within a donut that make it awesome. And if you have one, it's kind of like, okay, well, that could be good. But what makes a great donut is you have to have all of these things working together. I'm a really big fan of peach and pistachio, just in general. I put it in yogurt or whatever. And I had a donut, and I think it sealed the deal for me when I had a donut that was peach, pistachio, and I had dark chocolate on top. And I was like, come on, these are amazing. And then in a donut, well, we want really good cake on a donut. So the cake has to be good. We don't want to cop out and just put any type of bread on there and just put some icing on top. And so that concept translated pretty well for me into my professional life. They need to stay separate. I need to be able to evaluate them independently, just like I think I can for a really good donut. And they need to work together. And sometimes they'll work together in a way that we don't expect, like peach, pistachio, and dark chocolate. But if you've ever had those three combined together, you realize, oh, wait a minute, there's something here. And so I think that's the balance that I'm trying to strike is they need to be integrated enough that they work well, but I need to be able to evaluate them independently. And so my day job, which is to me the largest chunk, that's the cake of the donut, if you will. If you take that away, it's not a donut anymore, right? Like you're not sitting on the couch, most days at least, eating a spoonful of icing and calling it a donut. It's just not, no, like you have to have the cake. And the cake is the largest percentage of time. It's the main focus from an income perspective. Typically, it would generate the most income for your household. And then that becomes the foundation upon which you can start to layer other things. So you can't leave it out. But then if you add it and like that's all you have, well, I think you can make a really good donut with just having cake. But man, if you can start to add a really good icing and put some toppings on top, all of a sudden those things can both be different and work really well together. I think that to me is like, cool, that's what I want. I want professionally a space that I can do different things and they're integrated.
Even your point on evaluating them differently, I think that is fascinating. Your base might be the same, but depending on the icing you put on it, and that's kind of the try of different skill sets. Whether you're a developer and you want to try building websites or you go app play, or even the teaching aspect of it is fascinating. I love that. There's something to it. Like teaching through analogies, I think is the most beautiful way. It's timeless. It allows you to really kind of explain it. I know I do the same thing. I'm in marketing. I use acronyms all the time, and I'm like, do my friends and family even know what I'm saying? They don't. Okay, I put billboards digitally on the internet. Cool, it lights up. So could not agree more. One point I do want to get into, because I think this can sometimes be a fear of people as well before they start doing this, is really how do you separate that, right? Because you always got to have the base cake, but how are you separating it within your life? Do you have designated times you do X, Y, and Z? Are you very clear on guardrails and rules behind each one? Really, how do you separate your most important resource, which is time, to do this effectively?
Yeah, it can be very tricky. So I want to acknowledge this first and foremost. It can be hard to find the right balance. Today, like where I am today is very different than where I started, or honestly, like where I could have been had I been more intentional early on. At first, I just knew there was an itch that I needed to scratch. And so, like any itch, we just kind of start reaching back and we start trying to like gnaw at it, right? Where I think if we are okay with the idea that, hey, I will be a person who does multiple things, and we just can call that what it is and don't see it as this thing we have to like hide or this like dirty little secret, then I think we can start to look at, okay, how might I fit this into my life? For me, when I started my career, I was also newly married, and my wife and I had this rule that was we want to go to bed at the same time. We want to go to bed together every night, right? There's plenty of obvious reasons as to why there's a benefit there, but at the very least, like, hey, this is just we want to like end our night together. Well, what I learned very quickly was I'm a much better sleeper than she is, which means if we go to bed at the same time and try and wake up at the same time, I'm just in bed for so long and I become incredibly restless. And now all of a sudden she's not sleeping well because I'm just squirming and waiting, right? So I decided, okay, wait, if we're going to go to bed at the same time, what if I woke up when I'm ready to get up? So I started doing that, which was hours before her. She was not a good sleeper, especially back then. And so I would get up and I'm like, okay, well, now what do I do? Oh, let me use this time to get ahead on work or maybe learn some new things. So I started to put aside that time. And the way I thought about it was me time. Like this is the time where there's no demands on my schedule. Most of the world was sleeping. Okay, well, if I have this time that other people are in bed or kind of doing whatever humans do when they get up in the morning, and I'm going to apply it to my craft, what if I could now like make that more intentional? So instead of just when I kind of feel like it, I started getting up at the same time. So standardizing that experience, it quickly evolved into I had 2 to 3 hours every day to start the day in my own space, in my own time, applying it what I wanted. Today, what it looks like is being very clear up front. So before I take a job, I let the person I'm joining, the team I'm joining, the founders I'm working with, hey, just so you know, I know what it takes to get the best out of me, and it involves me working on other stuff. Sometimes that's a fun side project. Sometimes it's consulting on a different project. And I do all of this because I know what it takes to get the best work out of me, to avoid burnout. And I've at this point been in the industry a long time, longer than most of my peers. And the reason I think I have staying power in the industry and can provide value consistently is because of the way I've set up my life. And so if you're not okay with that, then I should probably figure out something else because I know what I need. Right. So back to the looking for people to meet all of our needs. What I'm also able to tell them is, hey, I'm not looking for you to meet all of my needs. It's not up to you to like, is Morgan being artistically inspired or can he do everything that he hopes and dreams at our business? It's like, congratulations, you're off the hook. You're not responsible for my professional success.
Love that.
And so it's a give and take, but it's a conversation that happens early. And a mentor of mine would say that expectation minus communication equals frustration.
Amen.
Right. So when I come to the table and I can say, hey guys, ladies and gentlemen, I know what I need to be fulfilled professionally. And congratulations, it doesn't involve you having to like stress out and worry. We're going to just work together on this. But sometimes you're going to see a project pop up and you're like, I didn't know Morgan was designing custom kettlebell art, right? Very weird. But that's okay, because if you start to notice a problem or you're not getting what you need from me, then let's not start by blaming the side projects. Let's have a conversation together about what needs you have that I'm not meeting. And I would much rather talk about the conversation at hand of I'm not meeting your expectations in some way. And like, let's have that conversation, but let's not get lost in the symptoms of performance related issues. Let's just like hit it head on. So it takes time to get there. If you're just starting out, my encouragement is to start small and try to keep some level of clear separation. A lot of people will be working in a company and then think, oh my gosh, a bunch of our clients at my day job need the skills that I can provide, right? That to me is a big no-no, because you start commingling these areas of your life. And so when I think of commingling in finance, there's an idea of commingling funds, which one of the most important things you can do if you're starting to get paid for side projects is set up an LLC and have a separate bank account for that income and those expenses. And the reason is because most people who get in tax issues are commingling their personal finances and expenses with any source of income. So step one, make them separate. But commingling to me goes well beyond finance. It's my calendar. So I like to have a separate calendar set up where I'm managing this time and effort. I also want to have separate contacts. Now, LinkedIn is a little tricky because obviously it all pools in one place. You only have one LinkedIn account. But as quickly as possible, I want to put it into a separate email inbox. So I'm not talking to potential clients out of my company, my day job inbox, and vice versa. I'm not looking at my day job to source clients. Absolutely not. From time to time, I may collaborate with coworkers on side projects, but then it again is any of those potential overlaps to me is risk. Anywhere that I commingle, whether it's my personal life or side projects or my day job and side projects, any overlap just creates risk. And I think it's worth asking ourselves, how much risk do I want to burden this undertaking? And I think more often than not, we're making a lot of very risky decisions where I have a friend who says that he tries not to break two laws at once. And so if you're driving down the interstate and you're speeding, well, make sure your tags are up to date, right? Or if your tags are expired, well, then don't be caught speeding, because now it's going to start stacking together pretty quickly. And I think in much the same way, it's okay to add a little bit of risk to the equation if for no other reason than doing multiple things adds risk. But a lot of times people will find themselves adding risk unnecessarily, sourcing clients from their day job, commingling their personal finances with side income, or, and this is probably the most like what seems minor but becomes major pretty quick, is using technology and tools paid for by your day job. Oh, your Photoshop subscription to also service clients. And I think that's where things start to get pretty messy. And so for me, there's a lot of tools that my company would pay for that I pay for personally, if for no other reason than to make it very clear that if I use it for one thing or another, that if they're like, well, Morgan, you used Photoshop for this side project. I did, and I pay every month for my Photoshop account. So it's not a company Photoshop, it is mine. Same thing with my computer. As a software engineer, intellectual property is a really big thing. And my personal rule of thumb is any computer that I'm writing software on, I must own it. It's like, well, why is that? It's like, well, first of all, because I'm not installing key logging technology and all of this kind of ridiculous stuff that people use to micromanage their employees. And when I leave a company, it's coming with me. There's no world where somebody shows up and says, that thing that you do 99% of your work on is coming with us. It's like, nope, I'll own it. I'll sign whatever I need to assume liability. But there are certain tools of the trade that I think is super important for us to maintain ownership of. And like what that means is, yes, because of these incurred costs, side projects need to do more for me. I need to make more money for them to cover these costs. It's like, yeah, but we're talking about when you have a skill or an ability that you can bill for hundreds of dollars an hour, then why are we nickel and diming a $30 a month piece of software when we're professionals and we have high value skills? And if we're treating them that way, then I think there's a lot of room to be very thoughtful about keeping them separate. So I realize we've kind of blended from how to keep it all separate
It's
or
important. I think there's such great tips in there. And I think, yes, you might save some money if you're like keeping Photoshop between two accounts, but the mental clarity of keeping those separate. And then I promise anyone listening to this, when you go do taxes, it is going to be so much easier if you have everything separated. I promise you, going to kind of nickel and dime that, it is not a good setup. And it allows you to be fully aware of what you're doing and not feel shady about it. And I think that's one of the biggest things I want to push. Like, you don't want to feel shady. Your point of going in initially and saying, hey guys, I'm going to work with you. I'm going to crush it from the designated hours me and you agree with. When I'm on my free time, I might be doing other stuff, and you guys got to be okay with that. And letting that expectation up in the front end is so healthy. The mental clarity, the lack of shadiness is going to be so healthy long term, where you can feel good about doing both sides of things.
yeah, and most of what we're talking about here is not expensive in the grand scheme of things. And it's also not complicated. Nowadays, with a few $100, you can set up a business, you can set up a bank account, you can configure all of these things to be completely independent. And so today, when I see it not being set up that way, the first thing that comes to mind is they're just not taking it seriously, because it's not hard to take it seriously. It's not complex. It's not even that expensive. And I think sometimes we're just bad at doing the math. Right? Early on, we're like, oh, that's so expensive. And I went through and I added up every tool that I need to like look like a professional and be a professional who doesn't commingle. And I'm like, oh, this is like $150. That, sure, if I had to go explain why I went out for lunch today and it cost me $150, well, yeah, my wife's going to have a lot of questions at what I did at lunch. But we're talking about the tools that I need to potentially make thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars of extra income. And if it costs $150, $200, $400 a month. Like, we're talking sums of money here that if our side projects are in the realm of technology and digital and these like high leverage areas of expertise, it's just not that much money when you look at how much it could cost you, right? What is the cost of your employer looking at your behavior and wondering if you're conducting yourself with integrity? Well, how much does that cost? I don't know, your next promotion, maybe your job. And to me, it's like, it's not worth it. And I think when we get good at the math, or just basic at the math, and say, what is the cost of not doing this well? Then we realize, oh, it's actually very cheap comparatively. I paid a contractor recently. So I actually do a lot of moonlighting. I also hire moonlighters. Why? Because I think they can manage their schedule well, and I believe it, right? I drink my own champagne or eat my own dog food, however you want to say
Love
it.
them both.
And so I hire a lot of moonlighters, and nothing tells me that they are less experienced quicker than them asking me to Venmo them the amount I owe.
Yeah, agreed.
And I'm like, my heart goes out to them. And at this point, I've just said like, hey, I'm not going to do that. That's not how you will be paid. And it's because I care about you. Like, I'm not Venmoing your personal account. I also have a joke between my wife and I that Venmo is like mommy money laundering. So this just, supports that narrative a little bit. But yeah, there's a number of signals that we give. And if we're going to bill somebody a few $1,000 and then don't have the decency to send them a proper wiring instructions or an invoice with a button that they can click to pay us, then it's kind of like showing up to a job interview and not wearing a clean shirt. Like, why would you do that? It's such a small thing that you could do that would have so much value. So I think how we conduct that side of our lives and that treating it seriously, I think causes others to take it seriously as well.
Agreed. And I think there is a healthy amount of fear at the beginning side of like, I don't know how to create an LLC. What is an EIN number? There's so many resources. My fiance, she started her business last year as a physical therapist, and she was terrified, right? So I was like, hey, come sit with me. Like, let me show you how fast we can do this. Within 30 minutes, had our LLC set up, applied for a bank account, took us no time, set up QuickBooks self-employed. Guys, use tools like that, pay the invoice. It's so much easier. And it made her really stand out as a professional in a world where people are like, yeah, just PayPal me or Venmo me for this service. No, invoice, build through here, really builds that credibility, which I like. Question for you though, let's switch gears a little bit. I think one of the coolest things you said earlier was you have itches, scratch it. I think that's the biggest advice I have for people. If you have this itch to try something, you're not gonna know the best place to scratch, just start, right? How do you recommend, or how did you find the skill sets you need to moonlight?
Um, say the last part of your question again.
How did you, first of all, how did you find the skill? Okay, let me do it this way. You have different skills. I see kettlebell art that I didn't even know you helped design. So we're going to talk about that. But how did you kind of find these skills to start moonlighting that might even been different than your 9 to 5, it looks like, unless you're doing kettlebell art on your 9 to 5 too.
Definitely not doing kettlebell art on my 9 to 5. I usually what I would tell people is I have average intelligence, but above average curiosity. And so I have a curiosity to understand how things work and why they work. And what I learned pretty early on with technology is the floor, or like the worst case scenario, is actually not that bad, right? I don't know how to set up an LLC. It's like, okay, well, how to set up an LLC is the first step. And then once you take that step, you'll be presented a link that says, especially I was in Georgia at the time, how to set up an LLC in Georgia. Click, right? And then it's like, oh, this is a government website. That's reputable. Oh, here's a form. Start typing in. And so I think if you're willing to like feel your way forward, you can get through a lot of friction. More often than not, we build up ideas in our head. And this is a beautiful part about humans, by the way. We have an unrivaled ability to manufacture stuff in our head. It's what makes creativity a thing. And it's also the absolute worst part of humans, because we imagine so many things that will never happen and aren't as bad as we think. And so the kind of our greatest blessing is also our biggest curse, which is anxiety and stress and fear that aren't real. And the only way I know to combat this, and this is in business, this is in life, personal, all of the things, is to just figure out the right next step, one step at a time. And in most cases, especially doing stuff in the digital world, it's really easy to walk back. It's really easy to throw it away. If it doesn't make sense, you can kind of just stop whenever you want. But the only way of overcoming this like fear and this overthinking and all of that is to just get started. Do something, look at the right next step, and start kind of walking your way forward. What's beautiful with tools like ChatGPT today and where it exists is you could just ask, hey, what are the questions I should be asking myself if I'm going to start an LLC? How do I start an LLC? Is an LLC the right thing for me? It's going to just start feeding you information that plenty of it will be wrong, but enough of it will be right, or at least directionally accurate. And I think that's a phrase that I love, directionally accurate, because we think that we have to have the answer to move forward. And you don't. You just kind of need to know directionally where to start walking. And in the walking, things become more clear. And so when I meet somebody who's got a business idea, or they've got this concept for a side project or side hustle, and they haven't, sent a text message to a friend who might need that service. And it's like, okay, well, how much are we just making an excuse, right? Is what you're saying actually just the newest tool you're using to procrastinate on something? And how might we just start walking forward and say, step by step, how do we get there? Because if I had to like have this big master plan before I got started moonlighting, well, I never would do it. But that's true for the same thing. I've had this incredible relationship. One of my earliest jobs, I was a trainer at a special event venue, and I was like one of the youngest trainers. I'm kind of like, how did I get here? But there were the other two trainers were these women in their, I think, 50s or 60s. And I was dating somebody, and I'm thinking like, all right, how do I know if I'm ready to like take the relationship to the next level? How do I know if I'm ready to get married? And they're like, here's the deal. There's two things in life that fall by this principle. If you think you're ready, you're wrong. And I'm like, okay, well, say more about this. And they're like, when it comes to getting married or to having kids, you're never ready. And if you feel like you are ready, well, just get ready to be wiped off your feet, because it's just, we don't get to know everything ahead of time. It is in the doing that we actually figure out what it takes to get it done. And so I would actually, to their point, they'd never started a business, but I would add starting a business to to that bucket, right? Like having kids, getting married, starting a business are things that you don't get to know everything that it takes. And if you did, you wouldn't do them. But we need to know what's the right next step. How do I start walking that direction? And the last part I would say is, and then we just need to move forward with intention. What are my intentions here? And let me start walking forward with that clarity. And I can take step by step, knowing that for most of us, like, yeah, we're smart enough. Like I'm not above average intelligence by any means. I'm like smart enough to like figure out one step at a time and work through those. Where I think most of us just get lost in all the potentials, coulds and woulds, and the same creativity we want to bring to the world in the form of side projects is also what's crushing us when it comes to fear, uncertainty, doubt, risk, all of that. And most of this stuff can be tested, can be rolled back, can be stopped at any point in time, but we need to like start walking in that direction. And as long as it's directionally accurate, I think the rest will work itself out over time.
And I think that's really important with, you already have your cake, you already have your donut, you have your 9 to 5. So you can kind of have that more risk without having so much fear. And my advice to people is you're going to take that first step and realize there's different paths that you might not even been aware of. And that's the most beautiful part. Where I started a business, we were selling golf t-shirts, right? All of a sudden, next thing you know, I was like, I'm an artist, very like you. I put up a golf print, that thing sold out. So now we sell golf prints to everyone. That was not even in my mind when I built this business plan. So just being able to say,
That's
hey,
right.
sandbox, let's see where this takes me. That's the fun part and almost the addicting part of this whole aspect.
Yeah, I think so. Within this, within our day jobs, a lot of us may find ourselves in a more developed business, right? So in our day jobs, let's say you work with a team of 5 to 10 people, and the company is doing millions of dollars of revenue and all of these different things. Well, we take how we think about our day job and we translate it into, okay, well, I don't have this formal plan, or maybe in your day job you have to have like a project brief before you get started, or you have to talk to your boss to like figure out if you have permission to allocate company resources, blah 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 blah, right? That's actually a lot of what sucks the fun and energy out of side projects. Now, I understand why we have to do it in big business, because we have to be held accountable for how resources get spent, right? Like, got it. And you have something that's working, and whoever owns that thing doesn't want it to break. Got it. However, when it comes to side projects or stuff that maybe we find fun or interesting, or just are just ours, like that we own responsibility for, when we shouldn't add the same level of bureaucracy that we need in our day job, because we're trying to optimize for different things. In my day job, we're trying to grow and build something that provides shareholder value to multiple people, and each person has a different chunk of the whole. And okay, that's complicated. But in my side efforts, it can be very simple, which is I want to do it. And I don't have to report to anybody for wanting to do something if I've got the time and energy set aside to actually do it.
Oh, cool.
And so that's one of the things for me. And you mentioned the kettlebell art behind me. That project actually began just, I'm a technologist. I make things. I'm a software engineer. And I wanted to stay on the cutting edge, the front of the wave of AI. And so I set aside time. And for a while, I wasn't taking on any billable work. I'm just playing around with AI stuff. And I got to a point where I realized, okay, just dabbling here is kind of, it's not as constructive as it could be. I need a project. I need something where I could pick a couple of things and really push into it and see what's possible using AI. And at the time, a number of life situations combined where I was like, okay, I think an Instagram account where I could produce a daily piece of AI generated artwork could be a thing. Oh, let me pick a market segment that typically has a high lifetime customer value and has a cult-like following. Fast forward a couple of levels of ideation later, and it's like, oh, well, a daily AI generated piece of kettlebell art posted on Instagram. What would happen? And it was no more complex than what would happen after 100 days of doing this. Let's get started, right? And over that period, I built an Instagram following of over 3,000 followers, had tons of like DMs and incredible conversations with people I never would have interacted with before. And also realized, wait a minute, as a software engineer, one of my biggest bottlenecks has been design. That like I usually like how things look and feel, or I have a concept in my head, but absent of like finding somebody on Fiverr who can go and edit it, it's really hard to bring some of the aesthetic parts of what I would consider my creativity to life. Well, now that door is open to me because there are tools where I can start to more or less scope a piece of art, and it will give me back different ideas. And also in that process, I'm learning, oh, wait a minute, I'm a bad client. I asked it for something and it gave me exactly what I asked for, and I asked poorly. How might I ask this better? And over that, the process realized, oh, wait a minute, I now have a new way to express myself as a creator, as an artist, because of these tools that I never would have seen otherwise. And oh, by the way, when my day job needed a way to integrate to allow clients to have a similar, really quick experience of feedback on something we needed them to create in the onboarding process, I was like, oh, let's just use AI. And I had the experience of doing it myself. And what could have been a multi-week or multi-month task of implementing AI into our workflow was like 30 minutes. It took 30 minutes to embed at this key point in the onboarding process that had tremendous value for our business. And the only reason I can point back to that I knew how to do that confidently and could raise my hand and then implement it was because I've been doing it myself.
You nailed it. And I think that is where employers, if you're listening to this is why you need to push, not push, but allow your team to try different things. It will be beneficial. I remember my boss did the same thing. Brooke, she's incredible. She sat me down 4 years ago. She took me out to drink. She's just like, you got to start an LLC. Like, you just have to. You're going to be with me for a long time, but like, here's my advice of why you have to do this. And I came away with it like, that was weird. Like, she's pushing me to start something, but now I see it was an investment in me. But the things I've learned on my side businesses or moonlighting, I bring right back into here where I'm a marketer. I might not be able to be as risky for some of my clients, but I can with my business, and then it works. And I go, guys, we did this shop ad campaign with Facebook. They just announced it. Let's integrate that with our team. So it allowed us to learn at a faster pace where the risk was on me, but she was the one saying, hey, go risk it and bring that knowledge back here, which is just incredible.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think there's value in having a number of different risk profiles in our professional life. And a lot of times, and I hate the word burnout because burnout to me is a symptom. It is not a problem. It is a symptom that points back to us typically as creators, either one, feeling like we're doing a bunch of stuff and aren't seeing the value. That's a big one. Or like we're being milked like a cow, right? Of this, like you're just trying to take every ounce of creative juice and I've got none left for myself, right? So a lot of the most creative people I know who are burnt out, what that means is when they get home at the end of the day, they want to like grab a drink and sit in front of Netflix rather than actually doing other creative things. And I think the opposite can be true. I think we can show up to our day job, give them the absolute best of what we've committed to and what we have to offer, and we are turbocharged so that we want to do all kinds of other stuff and we have different efforts. And one thing that I see is there isn't really a great middle ground, right? So I do my day job and I get really excited and I do a bunch of stuff and then I start creating on the side and I feel like, okay, well, I can only have one. So like, I must choose. Is it my day job or I have to go start a business with other stuff? And it's like, why don't you just allow both to exist? As long as you can do both well and they're both feeding each other from a creativity and an energy and an excitement perspective, what if we just created this third option that said you can work with a great team and a great company and you can have your creative efforts and just walk in both and don't feel like you have to pick, because as soon as you pick and say, okay, well, now my side project is my main thing. Well, icing doesn't make good cake. Okay? And so if we try and take the thing that we have designed for a certain purpose and we try and make it into something that it's not meant to be, that's a recipe for it becoming incredibly distasteful and getting, years down the road and we're like, where did it go off course? Why do I now hate this thing that I used to love? Well, maybe it's because you brought on the burden of all of this other, like I would call it anti-work. It's like the thing that you have to do when, you have a business that does a thing. And there's a great book by Michael Gerber called The E-Myth Revisited. And one thing that he talks about is there's a difference between a pie shop and making pies, right? And people usually get into owning a bakery because they love making pies, but don't understand that in order to have a business that makes pies, you have to run a business. And I think disconnecting those, I think can be very helpful, where when we have a side project or get paid to do side work, we can just allow it to do that. And we just make some pretty good money and we keep it on the side. And I don't have to make it grow and grow and grow such that it can replace my income. So I think we get off course when we feel like we have to pick. And sometimes the best choice is to not choose and just keep both.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I want a delicious donut that is covered in icing. Like it's great in the beginning, but
Yeah, I'm not giving up icing, and it's not a donut without the cake. So
exactly. Could not agree more. Well, we're one last question. We'll wrap this up. So we talked about awesome tools. You have a very wide breadth of tools you love to use. I've heard Midjourney, AI, ChatGPT, invoicing. What are some of your favorite tools you use that would help someone in this beginner phase or someone who's looking to kind of improve their work?
yeah, one tool that I love and I would recommend for anybody moonlighting is a great banking partner. And that sounds super, I sound like an old guy when I say it, right? But most banks make it very hard to get access to your money. And so the reason a lot of us don't like finance is because the banks made it hard. And the reason they made it hard is because their business model is dependent upon us not touching it and leaving the money alone, right? And so our incentives are not aligned with the banking partner. And so I like Mercury, and I know this reads like a Mercury ad. I do not work for Mercury. They're not even a client of mine, though I would welcome an email. But I just know the value of a really good banking partner to be able to set up cards quickly, set up new accounts, all of that stuff. I haven't found anything that comes close to Mercury. So that's the first one. I just like the anti-work, the stuff that's got to get done, and the stuff that I want to feel like a professional. The best way to do it is start with the money, right? And I want to be paid like a professional. And so great, I need to act like one. The next thing that absolutely destroys time and energy and focus when it comes to side projects is feedback. This is the reason I love Punch List, because it has made a lot of the complexity around anything visual where clients need to give feedback. I remember back in the day, it was we would just send over work to clients, or we would do a demo and we get back documents or screenshots, or they would use some whatever markup tool they have. And we would have a whole task just to figure out, okay, what the heck are they talking about? Right? So when they say, on the first page in the second section, we need to air out the panels. That was a phrase that we would laugh about all the time. But like, we had a client say, air out the panels. First of all, I don't know what that means. Also, what's the first page? Because is that the home page, or did you click something and then that link got shared with you? And so it's the first page you saw. And so that's very unclear. And then I think most of us nowadays have a good sense of what a section is, but you would be surprised you meant this component within this header. Oh, that's confusing. So the theatrics around figuring out what the heck people are talking about becomes this massive brain drain. Where what if instead I give you something to look at, and then exactly where your eyes are looking, you tell me exactly what you want? Amazing. And so when we saw Punch List, I was like, all right, this is what we need. We need no other way of receiving feedback from clients, and it makes it super actionable. So as I'm managing my own projects, I don't have a project manager. And so if a client dumps 100 pages of feedback on me, it's like, okay, well, if every piece of feedback takes a couple seconds, like if I'm like not being dramatic, let's say it takes even just a few seconds to put my eyes on where they're talking, that compounds massively the bigger the project is. Right? Well, one of the ways to make better money is do bigger projects. But if every time you do a bigger project, it creates more feedback from the client, well, pretty quickly, what's going to happen is you're going to say, oh, well, I just do smaller projects. I just do single page websites. And it's like, well, if the only reason you're doing that is because bigger stuff creates more feedback, then maybe what you need is just a better feedback mechanism. And a tool like Punchlist allows you to see it. I also love to mark it as resolved, because it gives the person who wrote it the feedback that says, hey, I did the thing that you said. And then I tell clients like, hey, when you start to see me resolving them, no, it's not live yet, but that's me working off of this list. So the next push will have all of these things in place. And so that has done major things for me. Every client, I end up setting up their own instance, working out of this feedback. They try and pull me back into Slack and email to tell me different things. I'm like, hey, you can create the punch list, or I can. If you wait for me to do it, it's going to take time. If you want to go ahead and get started, do it, right? And empowering them to set that kind of stuff up. I think we train people how they treat us. And when we just give them this open-ended, like, yeah, tell me what you think, just be ready for this bombardment of thoughts and ideas. And a tool like Punchlist helps us get it tight, get it really dialed in. And then what does that do? That allows more time and energy to actually do the work. And almost everyone I've shared this tool with comes back and says, this is great. Can we use this for other stuff? Yeah, you use it for whatever you want. I don't own the thing. Like, it's great, right? And so that's also another part of really great tooling. And as we pick really great tools, clients see us as the expert in those things, and then we expose them to new tools and techniques that further reinforces the fact that, oh, this person knows what they're doing. And then we start to solidify ourselves in their mind as the expert. And so who do you call when they want the best person to get the job done? Right? I want to make sure I'm in that seat.
Oh, love it. Morgan, you're the man. I'm so blessed to get the opportunity to talk to you. I learned so much about you. You get more interesting every time I talk to you. So I just want to say thank you for hopping on. Everyone listening, I appreciate you guys listening to all this. We're so excited. If you have questions, Morgan, where can they find you? Where's the best place to reach out to you?
Yeah, best place to reach out is on LinkedIn. I'm most active on LinkedIn. You can also check me out on my website, morganjlopes.com, and I'd love to connect.
Appreciate it. Morgan, thanks again. Everyone, give Punchless a follow. We got free trials. Come try it out. Appreciate everyone listening to it. If you have any questions, reach out to me as well. I'm on LinkedIn, but thank you all so much.